Hi, friends. Happy Monday. I'm back. This feels weird to be doing this again, but I'm back. My little break went a little longer than I planned for, but I used that time to focus on my day job and prepare some what I hope to be some exciting new episodes. So thank you to everyone for being patient. Um, Before we go any further, though, before we get started, I need to first give a huge hello to some very amazing listeners from around the world. And I hope I am pronouncing these all correctly. My apologies if I botch any. The first couple I know firsthand pretty well. Hello, hello, and hola, uh, konnichiwa, hey, svaiki, namaste, mulbwanji, aslema, and shalom. When I started doing this podcast, my goal was so simple. I thought if one person I don't know listens, I would consider this entire project to be a massive success. And now I am so honored and so humbled to have a global audience, which is so weird to think that someone on the other side of the planet found my podcast and is listening to it. And there's more and more, which is I'm so humbled and so thankful. Um, Thank you for finding me, for listening and being a part of this journey. I hope my messages continue to resonate with you. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Libby, and this is my audio journal, Finding Joy in the Shadows. And each week, I share stories from my life, how I'm navigating my professional, personal, and family relationships, how I'm handling disrespect and dealing with life's curveballs through it all in my own life every day. That's what I'm doing. I am aiming to find joy in the most unexpected places. And so this podcast is my way of sending just a little bit of positivity out into the universe. And so it can help us all find ways to grow, heal, and thrive together. Because let's face it, we could all use a little bit more joy these days, right? All right. So let's dive into some LPs for any newbies out there. LPs stand for Libby's Problems. And this is a term my nephew lovingly coined. Before we tackle any of the serious stuff, before we get into any of the life hacks, I always like to chat about recent happenings, whether it be local, global, or maybe it's just a random thing that I have personally latched onto. Um, I will admit, sometimes I might treat a story like, say, celebrity gossip or a quirky headline that I see in passing on Instagram. And I view it as a way bigger deal than most people probably do. And so my nephew Jackson always will ask me whenever I need to tell him that I need to talk to him, he'll always ask, is this a real world problem or is this a Libby problem? So that he knows what kind of journey he's in for. So for today's LP, I only have one bullet point, one thing that we're gonna focus on for today, and that is the election night. Now, I know this podcast was never supposed to get political. Yes, back when I first tried to convince a friend to co-host a podcast with me many moons ago, the idea was centered around politics. But when push came to shove and I shifted gears to focus on mental health instead and finding joy and sharing tips that might brighten someone else's life, I made it a point to steer clear of politics in this space. That said, I am an empath and deeply passionate about politics in my personal life. So these two worlds, as you can imagine, they collided after election night. And the conversations I was reading, that I overheard, that I personally was involved with since then pushed me to want to share how I am navigating this new world order, we can say. So today's episode is a little different. The Libby's problem I'm sharing will also double as the life hack this week. It's a 2-for-1 special to kick off the new season. Yay! So grab some coffee. I got my Starbucks here, or grab some tea, whichever you prefer, and let's get into it. Bonus, my little fur baby, Lulu Joy, is at daycare this morning, so we shouldn't have too much background noises. All right, so first things first. Like I stated a few moments ago, I am an empath. So what does that mean? Well, according to Google, an empath is someone that is highly attuned to the feelings and emotions of those around them. Sounds lovely in theory, right? But in practice, it can be a lot, right? I do not just feel my energy. I feel everyone's energy. And let me tell you, the week after the election, the weight of it all was crushing for me. It was like carrying the collective emotions of the entire world, and it legit weighed me down. I had to go completely silent for a while. This meant no TV. I limited social media, and I even had to tell a few peeps, my mom included, to give me some space so I could process everything and get my head above water. Sometimes it's okay. You just need to unplug for a little bit and keep things light to manage all of the feels when you're an empath. Like so many women across the US have been sharing online, I too woke up randomly at 3 a.m. on November 6th. And before even grabbing my phone, I felt this insane amount of pressure from my head all the way down to my toes. Now, if you're not an empath and you tend to see things in more black and white, then what I'm describing to you might sound a little cray, a little woo-woo, a little crazy. And I understand, but trust me, it's very real. And my body just knew something was shifting, and I could not shake this heaviness. Before I even looked at my phone to see any updates, I had this gut feeling that the news was not going to make me happy, and I was right. Now, I will admit, I was hoping for Harris to win, and I was ready to celebrate our first female president. I liked her policies. I believed she was more qualified, and I felt that she was ready for the job. But clearly, not everyone agreed with me. And I ended up calling my bestie, Jessie, that morning. And I don't think I've ever called her that early in the morning, but homegirl was already awake as well. And she was feeling the exact same way that I was. And we ended up talking for about 2 hours, just going in circles. We didn't cry, right? We're big kids. But the conversation was far from uplifting either. We talked about what the results might mean for the people we love, for strangers living halfway around the world, and for our own futures, right? Including how the income policies, right, might hit our own bank accounts. And we sounded defeated, sad, angry, and honestly pretty puzzled. It was like we couldn't quite wrap our heads around it all. Somehow, though, I managed to fall back asleep after we hung up at 4:30, around 4:30. And when I woke up again at 9 a.m., I hesitated a bit before checking my phone. But instead of dread, I was met with 17 unread text messages. And the very first one, at the very top, was from my very sweet, very dear cousin Teddy. And it simply said, "Sending good vibes this morning. How are you holding up?" And there was just something in his message. That text, it was, I don't know, just oh my stars. It was so sweet. So, so sweet. Um, we ended up having a nice back and forth. Um, and in that moment, I felt okay. You know, we were both sharing that we were both confused, a little disheartened. Um, but his message and his thoughts and his intent behind it told me that I was okay. I was okay in that moment. Um, all of my friends, their texts that morning were similar to his. Everyone wanted to check in. Everyone wanted to talk how they were feeling, and more than anything, they also wanted to know how I was handling the news, which was very sweet. Um, what's really crazy about that Wednesday morning, though, is that here in Minnesota, we all woke up to the most intense fog I had ever seen. And it wasn't just any fog that morning on Wednesday, November 6th. It was eerie, a little apocalyptic, not going to lie. And it hung around until about noon. And it set this very unsettling tone for the entire day. And I remember thinking, after looking out the window and seeing this just very eerie looking fog and absorbing everything that had happened while I was sleeping, I said, okay, before I even try to process any more of what is going on, what is going to be this day, I need to get my Starbucks. But it's my usual go-to, right? I need my cold brew with a little bit of cream, extra ice, and then I sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon on top when I get home. If you know, you know. When I walked into my Starbucks, one of my favorite baristas, Valerie, greeted me with her usual smile, and she looked at me and was like, "Oh my gosh, you're not smiling." And her comment kind of caught me off guard. I didn't even realize that I wasn't smiling, but I responded very quickly and just said, matter of factly, "Well, there really isn't that much to smile about right now." And my own words kind of shocked me, and I did not think that I was totally out of it, but clearly my facial expressions were not hiding how I felt. And so when I got home, I logged on for work and I checked in with some of the women on my team, and they were doing about the same as me. Confused, drained, not really sure how to process everything. And I could hear the panic in their voices, and I could feel their fear in their text messages that they were sending me. The rest of that week was basically a blur. And I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but anyone else find themselves just kind of going through the motions for the rest of that week without really connecting to any one thing? That was it for me. By the time Friday rolled around, I was ready to listen to some of my favorite political podcasts, and one of them being The Bob Cesca Show. And he has always been one of my favorite go-tos. I know I've mentioned his show before. Yes, he is political. So if your views do not align with his, well, then maybe you might not enjoy it as much as I do. But I love the way he breaks down current events. And listening to Bob and his now retired sidekick Buzz, listening to them share their thoughts and their feelings and even their own panics brought me genuine comfort. I found true comfort in hearing their voices. And it reminded me that I was not alone. Others were grieving too. And for me, I'll be honest, it felt like I was mourning the hopeful future I thought we were building, only to realize that 51% of the peeps around me didn't have that same vision. And for me, it felt heavy, a little sinister, and that energy for me was suffocating. And I understand hearing this might offend someone who disagrees with me, and that's okay. But these were my feelings. And I think it's important to acknowledge them, to process them in order to move forward. Because at the same time I was feeling all this dread, I saw people in my circles celebrating. They genuinely believed the country was now headed in a righteous, morally sound direction, and I respect their perspective, even if it's not mine. To each their own, right? In the days that followed election night, I did. I wrestled with my emotions, and it took me about a week to process all of them. And then I was left wondering, how the heck am I supposed to talk about finding joy if I can't even find any within me right now? Will I ever be joyful again? How can I be positive when the outlook on the next 4 years for me feels pretty bleak? Then, as if the universe was waiting for me to ask this question, I came across a quote from none other than the fabulous RuPaul. Now, I do not know when this interview was recorded or the context of the conversation they were having, but his words struck through. And when Ru was asked about facing darkness, he said, "You can look at the darkness, but do not stare at it. It will make you crazy, cross-eyed, and it will turn you into what it is. The solution: create magic, dance, sing, love, build environments where you can find joy because you can create joy." Friends, that was my aha moment. Those words broke through my own brain fog. And suddenly it was like I could see again. I know, might sound strange to some listening, but it really was a true epiphany for me. In my little corner of the world, in Plymouth, Minnesota, my life revolves around 30 square blocks and maybe 100 people, give or take. And that is when it really hit me. I am just me. But even in this small space, I still have the power to choose joy and create it, no matter how heavy things feel around me. So here's the life hack, friends. Here's the weekly life hack. I had to peel away all the layers of what I had zero control over. The one control thing that I had on Tuesday the 5th, I voted. I went and voted. I hoped, but when the other side won, I realized there were many things now that were beyond my control. To stay grounded and still be able to find joy in my life, I had to restructure my perspective and narrow what I allowed in to my personal worldview. And I shared this idea with a colleague recently and described it like an onion, right? At the core or at the root of the onion, that's us. That's where we sit. We are at the center of our own universe. For me, as we start to expand out, that first layer outside of myself is my dog, Lulu Joy. Next layer comes my immediate family and my besties. Then my extended family, followed by friends, followed by work. And then we get into the outer layers, and that's where my community sits. And as we get further out, my state, and then my country, and then finally, in the outest realm, right, the outest layer is the world. And so by focusing on the inner layers I can influence, I am still able to create a space where joy can thrive, even in tough times. As we move further away from the core, the center of the onion where we are, the less control we have. So for now, for the moment, my focus will stay small, tightly wrapped around the immediate 3 to 4 layers of my world. Myself, my dog, Lulu Joy, my family, friends, and my job. That's it. This will be my entire viewpoint for right now. Everything else, out of sight, out of mind. In the days after the election, I let too much of the outer layers in, and the weight of it was crushing. How could I possibly be supportive to anyone when I was being buried under things I couldn't control? It was kind of like this. For any Vampire Diary fans out there, you'll appreciate this. It was kind of like when Klaus famously told Stefan to turn it off. I turned it off. No more mainstream media, no more independent media. I even deactivated my Twitter account, not that I had been on it in I don't even know how many months. And I silenced most political talking heads on Threads. So now my socials are completely curated to include only joy. So that is topics related to BTS, funny animals, and food. That's it. For this moment is all about keeping my burden light enough for me to carry. And I know for some of you hearing this, it might sound like I'm speaking from a place of privilege, and you are not wrong. Yes, I am a straight white woman living in a relatively safe bubble of Minnesota. I understand how this message could be perceived, and that is okay. My goal in sharing my experience post-election is not to diminish anyone else's reality. It is to remind everyone that we still have the ability to turn off the things we cannot control. I think it is okay and sometimes necessary to focus on yourself and make yourself the priority. No matter who you are or what community you belong to, you deserve to protect your mental and emotional well-being. For some, that might mean having a wider immediate circle of focus. For others, it might involve creating safety protocols, depending on where you live or what your circumstances demand. And I respect and recommend you take these steps if you need to. For me, which is all I can really speak to, right? I know me pretty well. For me, once I peeled away everything I could not control and focused solely on my dog, my besties, my friends, my family, my work, I felt lighter. I started smiling again. I laughed again. The most important thing any of us can do is remember that we hold our own power. We have the ability to decide what we allow our minds to focus on. This is our biggest choice, and that is our power. Yet, it is so easy to hand that power away, to let fear and uncertainty take hold, to let the noise dictate our emotions and our decisions. But here is the truth. You do not have to live like that. You have the power to say, no, I will not let what I cannot control take control of my life, my future, or my happiness. Reclaim your power, friends. Turn it all off if you need to, even just for a moment. Recenter your focus on what's within your control, because that's where your joy lives. Okay. I think I've babbled on long enough. I know this is a shorter life hack than you're probably used to. That's all I got. As always, we will add to this next week. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. I hope you have an amazing week. And I look forward to our next chat. Peace out, friends.